Welcome to the What's Your Truth podcast, the show that not only showcases the best of independent artists, but also explores what inspires them, what drives them, and what they consider their fundamental purpose as an artist to be. With me today is Josh Decker, lead singer and guitarist for the face melting Scottsdale based hard rock band 10 Cent Revenge. A true artist since practically day one, Josh discovered rock and roll in his formative years and has actually been singing and performing in bands since he was 8 years old. Growing up in the Midwest, Josh's initial influences included country greats Brooks and Dunn, Alabama, and Lone Star. It was his fateful introduction to a little known Northeast band called, what was their name? Oh, yeah, Aerosmith, that did for him what it has done for so many. It showed him his path and left an indelible mark on his artistic identity. Fast forward a few years, not rewind, but fast forward, and a few projects, and Josh is currently relocated to Arizona, where he fronts the high energy and utterly mind blowing 10 Cent Revenge, which he formed with his partner in crime and What's Your Truth alumnus, Greg Turner. If you've never heard these guys, just please stop depriving yourself and for the love of God, go listen to their stuff. Reminiscent of Guns N' Roses, Motley Crue, and of course, Aerosmith. Their records are nothing short of brilliant, and to say that their live shows are incendiary would be an understatement of mass proportions. Having taken the world by storm, TCR released their debut EP, Road to Ruin, and has a pair of music videos so far that not only showcase the context of the music, but are also just too damn fun and entertaining in their own right. They've played several venues in the past year, including the 44 in Phoenix, Last Call in Tarzana, and the world famous Whiskey A Go Go in Hollyweird, where they have several shows coming up this year. Now, with all of that, I could end the intro right there, and there would be plenty of evidence suggesting that Josh has more than earned his place among the rock gods, worthy of every ounce of praise possible. However, I've had the good fortune to get to know Josh, write with him, and even take an impromptu overnight road trip to a random haunted hotel in the middle of Tucson. And by the way, what happens in Tucson, in case you didn't know, does stay in Tucson. And the thing I love most about Josh is the incredible balance between his talent and how freaking cool and genuine of a guy he is. A quick wit with the best sense of humor and a joy to work with creatively. It's been a pleasure working with him, knowing him, and an honor to be able to call him my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Josh Decker.
Oh, Johnny, you're gonna make me cry here, man. That was too much, man. I got my anxieties are twofold now. I have to live up to both that intro and to Greg's interview. So
Oh,
yeah,
God.
it's
Well,
good to be here.
you'll live up to at least one of them easily. I'm not going to say which one, though. So, no, man, seriously, I meant every word of it. It's really been awesome knowing you. It's funny to think I've only really known you for less than a year.
Actually, I think we met about a year ago at NAM.
Yeah, it was in June, so it was just shy of,
Oh, it
actually.
wasn't June. You're right.
Yeah,
For some reason, I thought April. Yeah, Coco's in Anaheim.
that's right. Yep, that is right. So it's kind of wild because I feel like I've known you for ever.
Yeah, we've been through a lot these last 9 months or so.
Yeah, it's like 9 months. It's like we're at the end of a pregnancy now.
Yeah, well, I can't. Oh, next question.
And on that, let's start the interview before I say something incriminating. My first question for you is, how did you decide that you wanted to become a musician?
I mean, a lot of the bands that I grew up listening to cite seeing the Beatles on Ed Sullivan as that catalytic moment for them. For me, it was actually, strangely enough, seeing the movie School of Rock when it first came out. I saw that and thought, "Oh my God, I can do that. That looks like the most fun in the world." So I was probably 7, 8 when I saw that, and I put together a little band, if you're generous enough to call it that. And we mostly did the songs in that movie, "Smoke on the Water" and
Mm,
ACDC and things like that. But yeah, School of Rock, and then I discovered Aerosmith, and it was all over from there.
yeah, and that's a common story. I mean, I think Slash was like that too. It was like when he heard Aerosmith, it was like, bam, okay, good. This is what I'm doing now.
Yeah, they were like the prototypical rock band of the 70s. I mean, Motley Crue and Guns N' Roses, that was a moment that changed. Sort of like when Appetite came out. There was a shift in the musical soundscape of America at that point.
Yeah, 100%. So, what was the first? I can't remember if you just answered this or not, so I'm going to ask it just in case. But what was the first experience you remember having with music, like at all?
I have really vivid memories of being like 4 or 5 years old, and I was sort of forced into piano lessons, and it wasn't really my thing trying to play like classical music. And fortunately for me, I had a teacher that was very um, generous with her time and willing to sort of break the mold That is to say, we went beyond just playing Chopin and Brahms. And she's like, okay, you learn these things, and I will also teach you how to play Styx and Foreigner and Cheap Trick and those sorts of songs. So I got to balance that out. And it really, thank you, Deborah Heald, really got me into loving playing my instrument rather than just going through the motions, which is what I'd been doing to start. And I suppose it's what a lot of people do to start. They just learn the rudimentaries, which you should do, but it's finding that passion amongst it all. So, yeah.
That's really cool, man. And that's really visionary on your teacher's part, because I think that's where a lot of kids get ruined that could go somewhere with it, is that they get forced to do this shit, but there's no carrot at the end of the stick. It's just the stick. It's just, you're going to play this because you have to, but there's no reward. Like, okay, but what do you want to do?
Yeah.
I
And
think that's
incidentally, and incidentally, it made me appreciate those other styles of music more because I could enjoy it without feeling like it was forced on me. It's like when you're forced to read Dickens in high school, you know, but if you come back to it after you've really explored literature, it's like, wow, this is actually really good. It's that same sort of sensation. So yeah, Deborah Heald was my piano teacher that started it all.
100% awesome. And then again, you've kind of sort of answered this to a degree, but who are the biggest influences on your work and why?
Well, there's a 70s Southern rock group that was huge back in the day, but is not so well known amongst my generation now, called Black Oak, Arkansas. And I think that Jim Dandy is the quintessential rock and roll frontman. We've played with them a couple of times and gotten to know those guys, but I think Black Oak, Arkansas, for their work ethic, for their pioneering spirit of just blending rock with whatever felt good, and just taking to the road and giving the audience their best night after night. So, you know, I always say in interviews, you know, Aerosmith was my favorite, or Alice Cooper, which it's true, those guys really were influential to me. But Black Oak, Arkansas, I think, was the whole package in a way. And I feel like that's kind of my band now. Like, everybody knows Aerosmith and Alice Cooper and Guns N' Roses, but not a lot of people know Black Oak. So I feel like I have that special, like, that's mine.
That's cool, man. I dig that. And that's actually a really great answer. And like, there's been, you know, for all the bands that everyone knows, like, I feel like for every Guns N' Roses, there's probably like a couple dozen other bands that are equally as good, or even, I mean, I don't know, it's hard for me to say anyone's better than Guns, but somebody that's of that caliber that just nobody knows about, like somebody like what you just described. So that's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, they were great. Cheap Trick, Alice Cooper, pretty much any of those like 70s hard rock in that vein is my influences. It's all tied up in that.
Right on. So what's the weirdest thing that's ever inspired you?
The weirdest thing that's ever inspired me?
Yep.
Oh my goodness. That one is a bit out of left field. You know, maybe it's not the weirdest, but it might be the most unexpected, in the sense that not a lot of rock musicians that I'm aware of anyway do this, but I read a lot of like old philosophy and literature. It doesn't reflect in our lyrics. I mean, you've heard Road to Ruin, but I think I base the song structure around how a novel would work out. Like, I try to piece it all together in a way that fits a narrative, and I think that our videos demonstrate that as well. And it's a little bit more refined on our second and third albums that are coming up. But yeah, reading a lot in high school, because I was a depressed and anxious mess, and I was like, oh wow, there's a pattern to the creative process that I can apply elsewhere. So yeah, maybe that's not really the sexy or the fun answer you're looking for, but you know, it's an answer. That's the one I'm sticking with it.
I was looking for the Josh answer.
Well, that is the Josh answer.
And now that you say that, so I never really occurred to me, but it's true. Like, even because like you said, I know the song, I know the music, and I could definitely see that now. Like, lyrically in Road to Ruin, I can actually see how there's like actually a progression of things. There's a story. There's something going on there, and that's actually really awesome.
Yeah, and I've always appreciated artists that tell a story. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Kiss, and I'm not gonna bash on bands like that because they have their niche that's very cool. But I really love Tom Petty and you know, Tom Waits, Bob Dylan, the guys that spoke in their music. There's something that, you know, music speaks louder than words, but also it helps to have really good words. So.
Yeah, that is a fact. That is a fact. So, how has your art influenced other people?
I mean, I would answer that in a way that I would hope that it's inspired younger people to not be afraid to get on stage, even though they are very, very young, and to play the music that they feel inside of them. I mean, there was a lot, I shouldn't say a lot, but there was a good amount of discouragement, I'll say, when I was younger from my peers, and people are like, well, why aren't you playing sports and why aren't you doing this and that? And I was like, I didn't care. I want to play music. I want to try it. And so I hope that if we meet a lot of the kids out here that are playing in bands at the Alice Cooper Solid Rock Foundation, and it's really inspiring to see them just going for it. Like, I wish that I had that, uh, that energy and that vigor at that age. But yeah, no, to answer your question, I would hope that they would look at me and my story and say, okay, well, he's doing it. There's a path that we can follow and make our own.
That's awesome. Right on. And I think that's really cool that you have like you're doing that with an intention to create that effect, that's actually really responsible, because there are a lot of dreams that get dashed by what you described, and it's a shame.
Yeah, I mean, the days of getting into rock and roll for partying and all those things are over. They never really were for me. I've always been pretty much. I'm boring. I have a fun image, but I'm a very laid back, and I just love the music, man. That's what I'm in it for.
I don't know, man. I've seen some pretty crazy Josh antics. I don't know if I'd qualify you as boring.
Well, those we'll discuss in the B-roll, the outtake.
That's right. A blooper reel.
Oh boy.
So, shifting gears a little bit safer of a question, I think. Do you have any pre-show or pre-studio rituals?
I mean, I'm very protective of my voice. So I always take some time to do vocal warm-ups. I have a great vocal coach who's given me MP3s of scales and certain practices that'll really open up my voice. And so, I just want to sound good and have the energy to, people are paying to see you. There's a bit of a responsibility when you're playing in a band. It is fun, and it's, but people are coming there for a show. And so I feel like it's on me to give that to them. So always vocal warm-ups. I always try to not be really social before the show, just to get into the right mindset. After the show is a whole other story. But yeah, it's just finding that zen, finding that peace, and really getting into the mindset of, okay, it's time for rock and roll.
Oh yeah. No, that's great. And I love just your viewpoint too of like, I mean, we're essentially in a service industry by being musicians, whether you like it or not. Like, somebody bought a ticket, so it's like,
Yeah.
So
and if you're lucky, they'll buy your
yeah.
shirts and your albums. So we're salesmen.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's 100% a
Yeah.
fact, as much as anyone might not like it.
Yeah.
So, what risks, if any, have you personally taken for the sake of your music?
Leaving Nebraska, we were the Rewind, my old band, we were pretty successful where we were. I mean, we got to play with all the nationals that we wanted that came through. And I mean, any normal person would have said, this is it. We are in a good, comfortable position. But I thought, this isn't good enough. I want to come out closer to a big music market, and I want to see if I can make my mark in a city where I'm not just a big fish in a small pond. So, we moved to Phoenix, and Greg came out with me, and now we've got Jake and those guys that came out here. And yeah, I mean, literally leaving behind. I'd never lived outside of Lincoln, Nebraska my entire life until the day that I moved out here. So yeah, always lived in the same. My parents' house was like 2 miles from where I lived when I moved out. Like, it was all very close.
So that scene in Welcome to the Jungle at the beginning, with him stepping off the bus with the piece of straw in his mouth, that's pretty much what you were.
Yeah, piece of straw and all. I'm from Nebraska. This long hair doesn't hide my red neck. Yeah.
Touche. I love that. And yeah, that is a huge risk. And yeah, it's true. It didn't even dawn on me that really, like, except for Steve, the whole band literally just relocated.
Yeah, I mean, it really, we had every reason to not succeed out here. I mean, and we can go into that more another time, but largely speaking, we started from scratch, and it took a long time of people out here saying, no, and then we're just like, okay, well, we're just going to go in and we're going to do it and try to stop us. So we're just doing our thing. It's overcoming those hurdles, but it's also just plowing right through them.
That's right.
And I'm really glad I made that jump.
Me too. Because you guys did it, man, and you did it great.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it was really, we got to meet you out here. We got to meet some of the most amazing people I've ever met in my entire life just by relocating. So happy we did it.
Absolutely. So, what's the craziest risk you've ever seen another artist take for their craft?
Oof. I mean, I've heard stories of, well, I know some people, I won't name them, who literally lost everything and became homeless in the pursuit of being an artist. And I admire them for that. There's a tenacity and a strength and this sort of resolve in that, and a sincerity in their dedication to what they're doing. I don't know if I have it in me to do that. I really don't. I mean, we all like to think that we would fight to the very end for our dreams, but until you're at the point where push comes to shove, are you really willing to fight for your dreams? So I know some people who have, and I admire them for it. Fortunately, I don't have to be in that position right now. I guess if that ever happened, we would know if I was up for the task.
No, totally. But I mean, and it's a big risk. And, you know, I can kind of see both sides of it, like the passion and having to do it. But then it's also like, well, how good for you is it really to live like that? It's
Yeah,
really, it's a personal choice, man.
yeah, and I mean, being in a situation where you don't have a place to stay that is comfortable, to where you can practice your craft, that makes it all the more harder. So the people that are out there doing it without that, more power to you. That is incredible.
Definitely. So, what's one thing about you that would shock everyone to know?
I'm wanting to get my PhD in clinical neuroscience.
Oh, wow.
That's kind of my long term plan.
Damn.
Yeah, I don't really, my social media presence is very music driven. I don't post a lot about academic side of me, but I have degrees in psychology and political science, and I was pre-law, and I want to be a clinical neuroscientist or something to do with neurology.
Wow.
Don't quite know what yet, but studying diseases of the brain is something that really interests me.
Interesting. And there are definitely some people in the music world that are like that. Like Brian May is a freaking astrophysicist, for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah,
So,
and he did it at quite a late age. I mean, he didn't get his PhD until he was maybe, I could be totally wrong, but I've heard he was in his 40s.
oh,
So,
really?
yeah, I could be wrong about that. I'm eagerly awaiting the fact checkers, but yeah, no, it was after Freddie had passed away, I think, when he
Oh, wow.
really dove into that.
That's wild. I did not know. I thought that happened all before Queen.
Yeah,
Boy.
well, we'll fact check after the interview.
I could be wrong. I'm not a Queen historian, so don't take my word for it by any means. So shifting gears, what's one thing or one tool that you absolutely cannot live without as an artist, and why?
I mean, aside from the obvious, my instrument, it, one thing or one tool that I could not live without as an artist. Hope. Is that too
That counts.
metaphysical? Is that
I didn't say it had to be tangible.
okay? Yeah, I would say that if you're not going through each challenge that you face as a musician with a little bit of hope left, you're not going to make it. I mean, the worst of my days, there's always been that little bit of, hope for the future and forward thinking that kept me grounded and kept me moving forward. And so I could not live without that. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't have a little bit of hope. As nihilistic and as pessimistic as my sense of humor may sometimes lead people to believe I'm like, there's a little bit of hope there, always.
No, that's cool. Well, what I love about that too is hope is a causative thing. It's something you decide on. It's a function
Yeah,
of your illusion, which is kind of what music's all about. So I think that's really killer, actually.
yeah,
That's
well said.
one of the better answers I've ever gotten to that question.
Oh,
See,
well,
you're already kicking Greg's ass. Don't worry.
well, it's all downhill from here, so buckle up.
So, and on that note, if you were going to write a book about your career up to this point, what would you title it?
Actually, I am writing a book about my writing up to this point. It's called, so some background. The Rewind's final EP, we weren't aware it'd be the final one, but it was called As One Door Closes. So I'm calling the book Another Door Opens, or
Oh,
some variation thereof. I'll toy with the verbiage, but yeah, I actually am writing a book. It's not it's one of those things where it's autobiographical in the sense that most of these things really did happen to me, but I put a different character in that role so that I could tell the story without feeling like, oh my God, how am I still here? So yeah, that's actually a thing that I will hopefully have done in 2023.
Oh, exciting. Wow.
Yeah,
Well, keep an eye out for that one. Damn. I
yeah.
didn't even know you were a writer. See,
I
I'm
didn't either.
still learning shit about you.
Yeah.
Wow. So, okay, I got two more questions for you. Number one, what are your plans for world domination?
My plans for world domination. Well, if I told you, then I would be, thwarting those plans. So, but seriously, I want to see us on top of the world as a rock and roll band. I want to be the next. I guess the last really big band that played rock and roll was maybe the Foo Fighters or Ghost. I guess you could say is kind of there. I want
Interesting.
to be on that level.
Yeah.
That's my plan for world domination.
Right on, man. I love that. Straight, simple, and to the point. So, my final question for you, and just to revisit my introduction to the show, the show not only showcases the best of independent artists, it explores what inspires them, what drives them, and what they consider their fundamental purpose as an artist to be. So, Josh, what's your truth?
What is my truth? I mean, in a nutshell, I think it's living each day knowing that it is your responsibility and obligation to make the most of it. I mean, life is really just a collection of memories. As this is going to sound so pretentious, life is just a collection of the memories that you make, and so go out there and make them. Don't be afraid and wait for them to come to you. Let life unfold. Don't be afraid to take the risks that you feel like maybe you shouldn't take, but do it anyway. The worst that can happen is you're back at square one.
That's a really great viewpoint, and I don't think that's pretentious at all. I think it's great advice. And what is it? Gretzky said, "You miss 100% of the shots you never take." And
Yeah.
you sit around waiting for shit to happen to you. You're not going to live life; it's going to live you. So I think
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
fucking awesome.
yeah, I mean, I've seen too many bands that, artists from the era in which I really got my chops that kind of didn't really go all the way with it, even though they could have. And there's others that definitely did, like Alice Cooper. Man, nobody can say that that guy didn't go full speed ahead. So I guess I'll try to emulate the better parts of Alice Cooper.
Well, and to this day, God, that guy's still going full steam ahead.
Yeah, I saw him a couple weeks ago. He's great. I mean, he still is a performer. He's unmistakably Alice Cooper.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Well, man, what a great end to the interview. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
And before we do end off, I did want to give you 60 seconds to plug anything you like, all things Josh Decker, 10 Cent Revenge, whatever you got, fire away.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, 10 Cent Revenge. Look us up on Facebook, Instagram. We are playing all over the Southwest throughout the whole year. Largely, we're really focusing on our Whiskey A Go Go shows. So we're playing with Bullet Boys June 23rd, Pretty Boy Floyd December 28th. Excuse me. And yeah, we're putting out another record this year, probably within the next 2 months. So be on the lookout for that. But Johnny, it's really great being here with you. It's always great catching up, man. We'll have to get together in person and tell road stories sooner than later.
Absolutely. That is a date somewhere down the line in the near future. Right on, man. Well, everyone, this has been the What's Your Truth podcast. Until next episode, we'll catch you next time. Later.
Yeah, you follow your own rules and you preach them on to me. But you don't think before you act, and you ain't got no business with me. You don't know. But tell me what's your truth? Oh, what's your truth? Now you got down on